I used to think intimacy sounded like keys, the jingle of mine in her palm, the quiet click of hers in my door. Tessa and I traded keys in the middle of a rainstorm after she said, "That's what best friends do. We carry each other's access." We were 28, paid in coffee and compliments, sharing mascara and alibis, and the kind of late-night confessions you only give to people you'd let bury your body or save your life. I told her everything. I told her the thing about my dad that wasn't public, and the thing about the panic attacks I hid at work by learning how to smile while my nails drew crescents in my palm. I told her about Aaron, the relationship I kept secret because I didn't want the office to have opinions about my heart until I decided if it would survive. She told me about her mother's migraines, her rent that ate half her paycheck, the way she hated her laugh on recordings. We decided we were each other's emergency contacts and meant it. The first crack didn't look like betrayal. It looked like coincidence. The day after I told Tessa that the VP had invited me, quietly, to pitch in a closed-door strategy session, our team lead accidentally sent my draft deck to everyone, calling it a learning opportunity. 3 hours later, Hillary, the one who could turn compliments into weapons, floated into the session with my phrasing on her tongue like she'd invented it in the elevator. I told myself workplace politics were a storm I could outlast if I kept my head down and my work clean. I told myself the timing wasn't proof. I told myself a lot of things. Then came the party. Tessa and I had split an Uber to a birthday on the West Side. I wore a red dress I'd only ever liked in mirrors. On the balcony, over sugary cocktails, I told her something almost no one knew. Aaron had been sober for 18 months, and sometimes I worried I loved the version of him who was trying more than the version of him who existed when trying got hard. She squeezed my hand and said, "You can tell me anything." And I felt the way a body loosens when it remembers it isn't alone. 2 nights later, an anonymous account posted a story with my silhouette in the red dress, and the caption, "She loves the chase more than the man. Ask about sobriety." It was blurry and mean, and just clear enough for anyone who knew me to know. I asked Tessa, gently at first, and then with a tremor, "Did you tell someone?" She went very still, which is how she lied. "Of course not. People watch, people talk. That's not on me." The thing about trust is that it can survive doubt if you tend it. It doesn't survive repetition. The repetition came as a drip. My therapist's name showing up in a snide DM, a line from an unpublished essay of mine, something about fear as a room with locked windows, appearing in a competitor's thought piece with a different metaphor and a too familiar cadence. A rumor about my father's health that only I and one other person had the right to shape. Tessa brought me soup when I cried on my bathroom floor and said, "People are obsessed with you," as if obsession explained theft. Hillary's clique, the ones who dressed like a monochrome mood board and called cruelty clarity, seemed to always be 2 steps ahead of me. They joked about my secret boyfriend, about swan dives into self-help, about how some people confuse vulnerability with strategy. I told myself they were clever and bored and overfished for content. I told myself Tessa wasn't feeding them. I told myself I couldn't handle losing both my privacy and my friend at the same time. One night, because grief makes you curious, I signed into the Notes app on Tessa's iPad to steal her banana bread recipe. The device was on the countertop, charging, a halo of light under a ceramic bowl. The screen flickered awake to a blue bubble cascade. Messages. Group name, Book Club, which we'd always joked was code for gossip with alibis. Hillary was in the group. So were 2 women I recognized from her corner of the open office. And Tessa, my Tessa, was the only one sending voice notes. I didn't press play. I walked to my bathroom and stared at my face until it looked like someone else's. I made a list. Who benefits? Who asks questions with fishing lures or punctuation? Who says, "I'm just worried about you," in a tone that feels like being pinned? Tessa had that tone sometimes. She also had my spare key, my codes, my secrets stacked neatly like linens in a guest room she thought she owned. I pressed play. Her whisper wasn't a whisper. It was soft because it was close to the mic. "She told me Erin's sobriety is a tightrope," Tessa said. "If you want to shake her, you tug there." Another, "She's up for that strategy session, no one knows. If Hillary accidentally shares the doc to all staff, Maya will implode." And then, like a joke cut with a blade, "She thinks honesty is a spell, it's leverage." I didn't remember dropping the iPad. The bowl cracked and rolled. The next morning, she showed up with croissants and that forehead crease concern she wore like couture. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I can tell." I said, "We need to talk." And she said, "Of course." And that was the moment I understood that some talks are not conversations. They are hunts. "What is book club?" I asked. Her eyes didn't flicker. "A group chat. We share podcast links." And voice notes about me. She exhaled. "Maya, you think very highly of yourself if you think everyone's talking about you." "You are." She looked at my counter, at the broken bowl, at the iPad. "You went through my messages," she said, finally finding her outrage. "That's a boundary." "I tripped over yours, the one you drew around my life and sold as content." She started crying then, and I hated that my body still wanted to hand her a tissue when the person bleeding was me. "You don't get it," she said. "They were going to come for you anyway. I was making it softer. I told them things you could survive." "You curated my suffering." "I controlled the narrative." "Whose narrative?" She didn't answer, which meant I was right. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her key at her like a small angry moon. I did what survivors do when the room starts to spin. I made structure. "Okay," I said. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you one chance to tell me who's paying you, because someone is. In money, in access, in safety. You don't trade this hard for clout." Her chin lifted. "You think I'm that cheap?" "I think you're that scared." She flinched. Then she laughed, brittle. "You want the noble version? Fine, Hillary has dirt on me." "What dirt?" Tessa stared at the faucet like it had a better angle. "My mother's meds," she said. "Insurance stopped covering them. I tried a discount card that wasn't exactly legal. I got a letter. Hillary knows the pharmacist who filed the report. She offered to make it go away. All I had to do was keep an eye on you and funnel the storm, make sure it hit where you could handle it." "That's your story?" "That's the truth." She lingered on the "you" like she wanted to climb inside it. "It wasn't all of the truth, but it was a slab of it. Pity is a dangerous drug. It makes you want to forgive before you understand." "And the money?" I asked. She smiled. "You think I'd risk jail for free?" There it was, the shine. I had loved her for the way she made me feel legible. I'd missed the part where she was reading me out loud to people who handed her receipts. "Give me my key," I said. She didn't move. "If you make me your enemy, you'll lose," she said softly. "I'm better at this." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm better at ending things." She set the key on the counter like it was evidence. "You're making a mistake," she said, and left. I changed my locks that afternoon. I called my therapist and told her the truth fast, like a confession that could stop a fire. I sent an email to HR requesting a meeting about hostile work environment behaviors and attached no evidence yet, which is how you keep your options. Then I did the thing you do when you're afraid your voice will be the only record. I started documenting. Every rumor with a timestamp, every accidental leak with a screenshot. I asked IT for the logs that show who opens what and when. I told Aaron, and he put his head in his hands and said, "I know what it's like when the thing you need becomes the thing that uses you," and I loved him for not making my story about his sobriety. I also did something petty and precise. I planted a secret. I texted Tessa a story in the register of honesty I'd used 100 times, breathless, 2 a.m., the kind that sounds like a metronome of trust. I'm applying for the foundation's grant, the one Hillary's boyfriend sits on, and I'm terrified. Please don't tell anyone. It was a lie. There was no grant. There was only an alias inbox and a filter. Book club lit up in 20 minutes. Tessa's voice note. She's going for the foundation. If you leak that early, she'll look sneaky. The optics will eat her. The next morning, an email from a burner address landed in my work inbox. Grant people talk. Maybe focus on your job. I sat at my computer and smiled like an animal who has finally learned the shape of the trap. The plan was simple and complicated. Collect enough to make HR take me seriously, set a boundary at work that cut Hillary's oxygen, and give Tessa a choice she couldn't twist into a hero story. The plan also included my least favorite thing, asking for help. Margaret, older, legendary, 3 executives away from not caring what anyone thought, watched me cry into my lunch with the patience of a person who had seen worse. She said, "You don't have to be brave alone. You just have to be accurate." She introduced me to the compliance officer, who introduced me to someone with a title that sounded like an apology. They asked me questions you only ask when you believe someone, like what room, what time, and what were you wearing only in the sense that it might be on camera. We built a timeline so clean you could slide a ring onto it.
At home, I organized my grief. That's a ridiculous sentence and a true one. I put screenshots in folders with names like voice notes transcribed and incidents work and incidents personal. I started running again because a body with adrenaline needs either a sprint or a scream. I told Aaron I needed 3 weeks of no big talks, only small kindnesses. He put sticky notes on my cabinets that said, "Drink water," and "The plant doesn't hate you, it's just a plant." The last piece wasn't about proof. It was about theater. Hillary loved a stage. The quarterly all hands would do. I asked for a slot to present team learnings because the only thing executives love more than a success story is the illusion of a process. I built a deck about digital hygiene and the ethics of ambient surveillance that sounded like a TEDx talk and felt like a blade. I didn't name anyone in the slides. I didn't have to. On the morning of, I wore a gray suit that made me look like my own lawyer. I sat in the front where the people who think they're safe sit. Hillary lounged 3 rows back, flanked by her mood board. Tessa slid in late, sunglasses on like the room was brighter than her choices. I started with a story about company culture as trust, about how rumors are attacks on focus, about how we lose good work when we mistake cruelty for candor. Then I clicked to a slide titled Patterns, the screen filled with anonymized timestamps, redacted names, and arrows that made a shape only a person who'd been inside the shape would recognize. Sometimes, I said, my voice steady enough to scare me, information leaks look like accidents. Repetition makes them a system. I played a 5-second clip, just a waveform with subtitles. She's up for that strategy session, no one knows. I didn't say whose voice it was. I didn't have to. Tessa went so still she blurred. Hillary laughed. It was her mistake. "Are we doing ghost stories now?" she said. I clicked again. This time the slide was an email header with the burner address. I had traced it to a VPN that a certain VP's boyfriend's foundation also used. I didn't say that out loud. I watched the VP sit up straighter and calculate the cost of looking surprised. 2 asks, I said to the room. 1, if you have participated in this, stop. 2, if you are being used to participate in this, come talk to me or to compliance. You'll be offered amnesty if you're the first to make it useful. Useful was a knife I handed to the right witness. After, the room emptied in a hush that sounded a lot like a verdict. The compliance officer texted me, 3 people already scheduled time. Margaret squeezed my shoulder in a way that felt like staying. Tessa found me in the hallway like a ghost with good skin. "You blindsided me," she said. "I taught you how to." She pulled me toward a conference room and shut the door. "Listen," she said, voice low. "Hillary is going to burn me to save herself. If I give you everything, the payments, the contacts, the receipts, will you promise not to bury me?" "Promise? I'm not a priest. I'm a person you hurt." "I didn't mean to. You meant to eat. You called it saving me because that let you swallow." Tessa's lip trembled. "You used to protect me. I used to love you." I said.
She went very calm then, and I recognized the look, the version of her that made survival a strategy. "Okay," she said. "Then here's the other truth. I wasn't just protecting my mother, I was protecting me. Hillary knows about the accident." "What accident?" "She told me about a winter 3 years ago and black ice and a dented bumper that became a hit and run when panic made her press the gas. No one was hurt," she said, "but the camera saw. Hillary's cousin works at the lot where the footage lives. She keeps it like a charm. She told me 1 leak equals 1 month of silence. And the money?" Tessa smiled without humor. "The money was for my trouble." "There are griefs you can't multitask." I said, "If you want amnesty, you go to compliance now. You give them everything. You tell your own story before Hillary tells it for you." "And you?" she asked. "Do you forgive me?" "I'm building a life that doesn't require your apology to function," I said. "That's the kind of forgiveness I can do." She stared at me like she was measuring if I still fit inside the mirror she used to groom in. "You think this is over," she said. "It isn't. Hillary doesn't lose. She's not the only one who knows how to survive." The next 48 hours were busy in the way disasters are precise. Calendars pinging, glass-walled rooms filling, a parade of people remembering their spines. Compliance interviewed staff with a kindness that still had teeth. The VP texted me a sentence so cautious it barely moved. "Appreciate your leadership. We're assessing." Translation: "Don't sue me yet." Hillary went on offense. She called me hysterical in a Slack DM she forgot was part of a channel with governance. She told anyone who would listen that I had weaponized therapy speak, which was funny because what I had weaponized was evidence. She asked Tessa for lunch. Tessa said yes, and then forwarded the meeting invite to compliance with a timestamp and a note: "Recording will be on." Watching someone turn around mid-fall is complicated. You want to cheer and hiss at once. At lunch, Hillary tried to recruit Tessa back to the future where loyalty is a receipt. "This will blow over," she said. "We'll all be embarrassed for a week and then pretend we believe in healing. Give me something small so I can show I'm cooperating. I'll say you were confused. It'll read." Tessa, God help me, did the brave thing late. She slid her phone across the table. "I'm recording, and I'm done." She said out loud the numbers and dates and the way the money came, Venmo descriptions that said books and Cabernet like a joke with an alibi. She said the phrase "leak the deck" to all, and the phrase "sobriety tightrope," and the phrase "Maya implodes," and it is a terrible thing to hear your erosion turned into a bullet list. It is also clarifying. By Friday, Hillary was on leave. By Monday, she was gone. The VP issued a statement that said nothing and admitted everything. The foundation boyfriend went quiet on Instagram. Compliance sent an all-staff about digital literacy and mutual care that made me roll my eyes and then print it anyway because sometimes you frame the policy you bled for. Tessa kept her job for exactly a week. Then she resigned. She sent me a message that said, "No one will hire me if you don't write something for me." I stared at the words until my phone dimmed. I wrote back, "I hope you build something that isn't on top of anyone else." It was kinder than she deserved and meaner than I am, which is to say, it was honest. I blocked book club. I changed my number. I gave Aaron a key because the jingle had to belong to someone again. When he relapsed, because people do, I sat on my kitchen floor with him and said, "Relapse is data," because my therapist taught me and because I didn't want to turn into a person who confuses control with care. A month later, an email tripped my honey trap filter again. Burner. Subject: "You got lucky." The body said, "We all talk. Watch your back." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to compliance with the subject line that said, "FYI, weather report." I made soup. I learned the names of the interns because people who are seen are harder to use as currency. 3 months later, Tessa's mother called me from a number that used to pop up when we planned birthday surprises. She won't tell me what happened, she said. She just says, consequences, and cries. Did you hurt my child? I sat in my car outside the grocery store and watched a woman juggle oranges back into a bag. I stopped her from hurting me, I said, and I didn't do it soon enough. Did you ever love her? The mother asked. With the kind of love that makes you stupid and generous, I said, and then with the kind that makes you honest. She exhaled. Then maybe you can send me the name of a lawyer. The good kind, not the one who says yes. I did. When the dust settled into air you could breathe again, I started a monthly thing that wasn't a group and wasn't a support circle and wasn't a club. I called it Closed Doors, Open Windows because I am either annoying or earnest, depending on your mood. We talked about friendship contracts we never signed but ended up bound by, about the difference between secrets and privacy, about how to recognize the tone that sounds like care but tastes like control. Sometimes 3 people came, sometimes 12. Sometimes I stared at the chairs afterward and cried because there are so many of us learning late. The last time I saw Tessa was on a Sunday at the flea market by the river. She was wearing a denim jacket and holding a ceramic lamp shaped like a swan. We stared at each other over the heads of strangers until the crowd did what crowds do, shifted us close. Hi, she said. Hi, I said. We stood in the aisle with the smell of buttered corn and rust for a beat too long. How's your mom? I asked. Better, she said. The new doctor found a generic that actually works. She lifted the swan a little. I got a job staging apartments. Temporary. It's nice to put beautiful things where they won't be used to hurt anyone. That's a low bar, I said, and we both smiled, real and wrecked. She looked at my hands. I miss you, she said. I miss who I was with you, not who I became. Her eyes went wet. I'm trying. I know. Do you... She stopped. Never mind. That's my favorite sentence now. I said. We put the swan between us like a neutral party, and then we walked away. I didn't look back. That felt like a betrayal of something soft. I didn't not look back. That felt like mercy. A week later, a package arrived. No note. Inside, the swan lamp. Cleaned, rewired, safe. I plugged it in. The light was gentler than it looked. I set it on my desk, where it could make the room kinder without making it dishonest. Here is the twist I didn't see coming. The enemy wasn't Hillary or book club or even Tessa's hunger. The enemy was the part of me that believed a story is safer than a boundary. I had been telling myself a story about best friends and keys and rainstorms for so long that I forgot to check the locks. The next time someone says, you can tell me anything, I will say, we can tell each other slowly. I will say, we can write it down where no one can forward it. I will say, privacy isn't secrecy, it's sovereignty. I will say, I love you enough to not make you my vault. When Aaron hit his 1-year mark again, we stood in a circle at a meeting where people clap for the slow miracles. He held the coin and said, I didn't get here alone. And I said, none of us do. And I meant it in every direction. On the anniversary of the day I pressed play on Tessa's lies, I sat on my couch in the gray suit that made me look like my own lawyer and wrote a note to the version of me who thought love could outpace strategy. You did not deserve it. You also let it continue. You are allowed to be both injured and responsible for the lock you change next. Then I taped the note inside my front door where only I could see it and went to bed with my phone in a different room, because sleep is a boundary too. The story doesn't end with a perfect friend replacing a broken one. It ends with me learning the choreography of ordinary safety. Water on the nightstand, phone on Do Not Disturb, passwords changed, therapy at noon on Thursdays, group messages on mute. Secrets portioned into the mouths that have earned them slowly. It ends with me walking past a mirror and recognizing myself without asking anyone else to confirm I'm real. It ends with a lamp shaped like a swan of all ridiculous things, making a soft pool of light on my desk where I write down the life I get to keep. And just in case the weather turns mean again, I keep the recordings and the receipts in a folder labeled with a boring name no one wants to click: Utilities, Quarterly. I hope I never open it. I also hope I remember the thing I learned when I finally followed the messages to their source. Intimacy without integrity is just surveillance with better lighting. If you're reading this because you suspect your own best friend is a camera pointed at your heart, here is my one piece of advice that is not a law, but might be a lever. Plant a kind secret and see where it blooms. Then make your next move sober, even if you don't drink. I still believe in keys. I just believe they're earned. And when someone asks me what happened between me and Tessa, I say the truest sentence I own. She called me her best friend, but then I read the group chat. 2 months after the swan lamp arrived, an email slid past my filters like a roach under a door. Subject: Cute lamp. Body: Your friend still owes me. Video still exists. $4,000 by Friday, or I share it with the DA and your HR friends. Consider it community service. No signature. Just a drive link that previewed a frozen frame. Winter glare, a bumper skidding, a license plate almost legible. The file name was ICE, 3 years ago, final.move. I didn't click. I forwarded it to a lawyer whose email I had saved under When the Weather Changes, then put my phone face down and watched the swan's soft light pool on the desk, like calm I hadn't earned. I hadn't spoken to Tessa since the flea market. Boundaries were the point. But blackmail doesn't respect architecture. It finds the soft wood. I texted her, "Call me now, not about us, but about safety." She called within a minute, breath already hitching. "Did they find you?" I said they found the lamp, close enough. On the phone, I heard a silence I recognized, someone rearranging shame into sentences. "It's Hillary's cousin," she said at last. "The one at the lot. He tried me last month. I blocked him. He's worse when he's ignored." "Then we won't ignore him," I said. "We'll end him, legally." "I deserve some of this," she whispered. "You deserve consequences," I said, "not unlimited leverage. Those are different animals." I told her my plan in the clipped voice I use when my chest is tight. We'd meet with counsel, decide whether self-reporting the old accident cut the blackmailer's oxygen, set a trap if the statute or the facts made sense. No improvising, no solos. She would not text, pay, beg, or threaten. We would do truth first, then law. For once, she didn't argue. "Tell me where to be," she said. The attorney, Margaret's pick, the kind who doesn't flinch, listened, asked exact questions, and tacked her pen when answers tried to be feelings. On the accident, no injuries, a dented fender, a camera that caught the skid and the panic. On the timeline, murky enough to matter. On the blackmail, illegal yesterday, illegal today, delicious to prosecutors if recorded clearly. "Two levers," she said. "Self-reporting controls the narrative. A recorded demand closes the door on leverage. You're not the defendant here, Miss Maya. You're the witness. Miss Tessa, you're both, but you get to choose order." Tessa looked smaller in the conference chair than I'd ever seen her. Not fragile, honest-sized. "I choose order," she said. "Truth first." We spent Tuesday in offices, a detective who'd rather not be named, a DA investigator named Baird, and our lawyer drawing boxes on a legal pad. The plan felt like the opposite of every mistake we'd made: bright, tedious, slow. I wore flats I could run in and a sweater soft enough to let my shoulders drop. Thursday at noon, broad daylight, grocery store lot, the cousin was supposed to pick up a test payment. The detective insisted on public and plain. "Blackmailers prefer shadows," he said.
Sunlight confuses them. He handed Tessa a wallet with marked bills and me a phone whose record light didn't blink. We parked 3 rows back. The sky was the color of a clean eraser. He arrived late in a jacket too thin for February, eyes scanning like he'd practiced menace in a mirror. I walked up first because the detective wanted him looking at me, not at the SUV idling near the cart corral. Tessa hung back, hood up, hands visible. "You're early," he said. "You're predictable," I said, and put the envelope on the hood of my car. "Before you touch that, say what you emailed." He smirked. "You think you're the only one who can record." "I think you don't want to hear your own voice in court," I said. "Luckily, I do." He leaned in anyway, like cruelty loves microphones. "Your friend ran. I have the clip, you have money. That's the trade. Or I deliver it to anyone who will pay attention. HR loves integrity stories." Behind me, the detective's SUV door clicked, a polite punctuation. The cousin looked over my shoulder, saw what you always hope a lover sees: inevitability. He bolted. They cut him off with a choreography that looked like mercy until the cuffs told the truth. The envelope remained on my hood like a prop that never made it to scene. Tessa exhaled a sound I'd never heard from her, something between relief and grief. "I hate that I needed you to fix what I broke," she said. "You needed a system. I'm not a system. I'm a person who finally knows which system to call." We spent the afternoon giving statements, the kind where your name gets spelled 3 ways and you stop correcting on the 3rd. The detective, different from the last ones I'd met, kinder around the edges, looked at Tessa before we left. "Self-reporting was smart," he said. "Never feeds them twice." We walked out into clean, cold air. Tessa rubbed her wrists like her body remembered old cuffs. "Is this over?" she asked. "Blackmailers rarely die," I said. "They hatch. But this one? Yes." She nodded like she wanted to believe me and decided to try. The bureaucracy that followed felt like penance and like absolution. Tessa paid a fine for the ancient winter mistake that her panic had turned into a longer story than it needed to be. The DA filed charges against the cousin: extortion, tampering, a collage of small crimes that add up to a shape that finally has to stop. Our attorney sent invoices that read like lullabies. Hours accounted for, nothing sneaking. At home, I put the email in a folder named Weather, closed, and lit the swan lamp because superstition and ritual wear the same coat. For a week, my phone stayed quiet in the specific way that feels like a reward. Erin cooked on Tuesday without setting off the alarm. I slept without the charger glowing by my bed like a tiny theater. I thought maybe the story had reached its after. Then Tessa asked for a seat at closed doors, open windows. She came on a Sunday, late, sliding into the last metal chair she'd run from the train. The circle was mid-sentence. A woman with a floral notebook was describing how a friend leveraged a secret into an invitation. The old me would have watched Tessa instead of listening. The current me listened, and when it was Tessa's turn, she said, "Hi, I'm Tessa. I took secrets and called it care, and the kind of silence we keep for hard truths settled over the room." She didn't perform, she didn't beg. She described the slope she'd skied down for years, each choice small enough to defensible, until she looked up and realized she was far from any map. She named hunger, leverage, applause disguised as love. She said the first time I betrayed someone, it felt like nausea. The 5th time, it felt like a plan. I miss nausea. After, a woman in a green jacket, the kind whose jaw tells you she's held her breath too long, asked, "Does anyone ever get their best friend back?" Tessa didn't look at me when she answered. "Sometimes you get something else," she said. "Not smaller, just honest-shaped." When the chairs were stacked and the tea towels were draped, Tessa hovered at the porch step like a kid leaving a party. "I don't know what to do with gratitude that doesn't expect rent," she said to me. "Practice," I said. "It's all practice." Spring edged in. The office calmed the way a classroom calms once the substitute leaves and the regular teacher returns. Same rules, less novelty. Compliance installed trainings with titles like Consent and Communication and
Digital footprints in you. People rolled their eyes and then took notes. Hillary stayed gone. Her cousin accepted a deal that required a statement and a ban from any job with access to footage. Sometimes justice is a ladder made of boring rungs. I saw Tessa at the flea market again in May. She had paint under her fingernails and a tape measure hanging from her belt like a truce flag. Staging has rules, she said, half laughing. You can't cheat the physics of a small room. It's like ethics, but for furniture. I said, staging is telling a story that doesn't lie. Exactly. She looked toward the river. I don't expect us to meet for coffee, she said. I wanted to tell you I'm not selling keys anymore. I said, you were never a locksmith. You were a locksmith's billboard. She winced, then nodded. Fair. We didn't hug. We didn't mourn out loud. We agreed, without articulating it, that proximity wasn't the proof of repair. Practice was.
In June, Aaron and I went to a meeting to clap for his coin again. On the walk home, he said, you know what I learned? There's a difference between secrecy and privacy. I laughed because the universe loves a callback. Who taught you that? I asked. He squeezed my hand. A woman who labels folders boring names so bad weather can't find them. That night, I moved the swan lamp to the entry table. It felt right there, between outside and inside, the hinge where most of my lessons live. I taped a tiny card to the underside of the base so only I'd know it was there. It said, intimacy without integrity is surveillance. Integrity without intimacy is solitary confinement. I'm learning the middle. The next Thursday, closed doors, open windows filled beyond chairs. I stood by the kitchen doorway and watched people sit on the floor like college again, knees touching, faces open. A woman read a text that had hurt her. A man described the moment he realized a friend was a weather vane for the strongest personality in the room. Tessa passed the cookie plate without comment and wrote something on a napkin she folded into a square and tucked into her pocket. When we finished, the woman in the green jacket lingered. You never named the group chat, she said to me, like a puzzle she wanted to solve. The one that broke you. Why? Because I don't want to give it more SEO, I said, and we both laughed in the clean way that doesn't hide a cry. Later, alone, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the first screenshot I'd taken months ago, the one where Tessa's voice was captioned like a spell. I didn't delete it. I didn't need to open it either. The point wasn't to forget. The point was to hold the file without it holding me. On the way to bed, I turned off the swan, then turned it back on, then finally set it to a low glow that makes hallways kind instead of haunted. I used to think my life needed a better lock. It turns out it needed a better light. If there's a sequel to all of this, I hope it's boring. I hope it's the kind of story that is hard to sell because it's mostly maintenance. Meetings on time, phones on silent, friendships with fences and gates and actual keys, none of them exchanged in the rain. And if the weather changes again, I know where the folder is. I know who to call. I know how to plant a kind secret and see where it blooms. I know that best friends who call themselves best at high volume aren't always the ones who will sit on your floor and label things with you. I know that if someone says, trust me, the correct answer is, I will when you show me your calendar. For now, I end the day with an unlocked sentence I once said like a wound, and now can say like a map. She called me her best friend, but then I read the group chat. And then I learned to write my own. Peace has a sound. For me, it was the faint hum of the swan lamp in the entryway and the small sigh my door made when the new deadbolt slid home. I started measuring days in ordinary chores, rinsing coffee cups, labeling folders with boring names, texting Aaron a picture of the sky when the evening remembered how to be blue. 3 months of that quiet taught me a dangerous thing. I believed I'd graduated from storms. Then the newsletter found me. It was a Tuesday. Laundry, leftovers, no makeup, when my phone buzzed with a link to Open City Digest, a Substack that dressed gossip like urban anthropology. The subject line read, "Closed rooms, open wounds." The first paragraph quoted me word for word from the previous Sunday's closed doors, open windows. Privacy isn't secrecy, it's sovereignty. A line I'd scrawled on an index card and read aloud to 12 people, sitting on my living room floor, shoes off, palms open. There were other sentences braided through, a detail about the man with the weather-vane friend, anonymized just enough to feel like camouflage, not enough to be safe. A description of my lamp, a ridiculous, tender swan that puts a halo on confession, that made the back of my neck go cold. The byline was Jane, nothing else. The tone was clever. The comments were
Teeth. Whoever wrote it had been in my house. I closed the browser, turned off the swan lamp, and sat in the now too dark hallway until the shape of the doorframe felt hostile. Then I turned the lamp back on, because fear isn't the only thing that knows how to repeat itself. I texted 3 people. Aaron, just a heads up, not a spiral. Margaret, need your spine in your calendar. And Tessa, this touches the group, not us. Can you come early Sunday? I drafted a note to the closed doors list. A careful, I'm sorry. A reminder that betrayal is the point of our work, not the plan. And an invitation to keep going if we could bear it. I didn't say I felt sick. I didn't say I wanted to cancel indefinitely. I didn't say the sentence I hated most. I should have seen this coming. All I wrote was, no devices on Sunday. We'll talk in person. We'll adjust. They came. You can't unfeel the way a room shifts after a drill goes live. We sat closer. I kept the lamp on because I refused to let fear assign the lighting. I put a metal mixing bowl by the door with a sign, phones sleep here, and watched people slide their glass rectangles in like coins in a fountain. We named it. We said out loud the thing that had wrapped itself around our throats, that someone had packaged our private practice as content, that contrition sells, that the internet is a carnival mirror that can make even the kindest shape into spectacle. We didn't accuse. We made a rule. No quoting anyone without explicit written consent. We added a ritual. Everyone reads one sentence they want kept. Everyone else repeats, kept. The room softened. And still, as we stacked chairs, I felt the itch of surveillance on my skin, like a mosquito you haven't caught yet. After, when the porch emptied, Tessa stood in the doorway with her keys looped around a finger she wasn't sure how to hold steady. I didn't tell anyone, she said before I asked. I won't risk this. I know, I said. I did know. For once, the old reflex to blame her was quiet. She glanced at the bowl of sleeping phones. You think the leak is a person or a device? Yes, I said, because trouble loves both. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled the print newsletter from the recycling and read it again, this time like a detective. What details were visible from the porch, which sentences lifted from my voice and which from someone else's. Halfway down, I spotted it. A phrase no one in our circle should have known. The gray suit that makes her look like her own lawyer. I had said that once, to Aaron, laughing, in my kitchen, while the window was open and a breeze carried the scent of street garlic. That could have been coincidence, or it could have been someone newer, someone who'd listened harder than they pretended. At the next meeting, 3 unfamiliar faces showed up. I didn't question them at the door because the whole point was that you didn't need credentials to be wounded. But I did do a thing I learned from plant biology and plagiarism traps. I handed out index cards with grounding quotes, 12 in total, each with a slightly different extra clause I'd written in careful, invisible ink. To the woman in black boots who said her name was Jules, I added the tale, and bones remember boundaries. To the tall guy named Milo, I wrote, tend the fire, not the smoke. To the curly-haired Cass, I wrote, honor the hinge. The newsletter that week quoted, privacy isn't secrecy, it's sovereignty, and bones remember boundaries. There it was, the clause I'd only given to Jules. A fingerprint on glass. I printed the page and slid it into a folder named Weather, Open. Then I called a lawyer who specialized in digital harassment and a journalist friend who believed in ethics like gravity. We mapped options, cease and desist for the lifted lines, a takedown request for content recorded without consent if I could prove a device. A quieter route, confrontation not as spectacle, but as boundary. The last one appealed to the part of me that wanted the story to be about repair, not scorched earth. On Sunday, I asked everyone to stay after for 5 minutes. I said the thing out loud. Someone's turning this room into a column.
I won't stop anyone from writing their life, but I will not have ours packaged and sold without consent. I held up the printout. Jules, I said, as gently as I could while being exact. This phrase only went home with you. Her face did the thing human faces do when the one narrative they packed rips. She lifted her chin, defiance, then let it drop, shame, and found a middle, exhaustion. It's not what you think, she said, which is what all weather says right before the rain proves itself.
What do I think? I asked. That I'm a vulture, she said, half laughing, half sobbing. I'm not. I'm an ethnographer. The room was quiet in the generous way. Do you record? I asked. No, she swallowed. I keep notes. On our sentences, I said. On our systems, she countered. On how women rebuild. It's important. She looked around the circle, desperate for a nod. I change details. No one can be recognized. Cass spoke, the curly-haired one with the napkin quotes. I recognized myself, she said, and then I almost didn't come back. Jules' eyes begged me to offer a smaller consequence. I can anonymize better. You don't understand. This piece is the first thing that's paid my rent in months. I thought I was doing a kind thing, amplifying you, making people care. People already care, I said. They're here. Jules laughed like a person dodging a car. 12 people in a living room is not scale. I felt the tilt then, the same tilt I'd felt with Tessa, the seduction of leverage disguised as care. I could have yelled, I could have thrown her out. Instead, I did the boring, solid thing. You can stay, I said, my voice steady even though my hands weren't, but without a pen. If you write about this room without explicit consent, you don't come back. If you've already written pieces that quote us, take them down or mark them as wrong and take your lumps in the comments. If that breaks your rent, I will help you find a job that doesn't harvest people. Her mouth opened, closed. It should have ended there, with hurt and a handshake, but the twist hadn't finished twisting. That night, a new post went up on Open City Digest. The cult of closed doors, it said. When privacy becomes control, beware rooms that ban pens. It embedded a photo taken through my open window, our circle from 3 Sundays ago, my shoulders turned, the swan lamp glinting. The caption, if you build a church, don't be surprised when someone asks what you're worshiping. The byline was still Jane. The voice wasn't Jules. The sentences were too sharp, too oily. My stomach recognized the cadence before my brain caught up. Hillary. I input the source code because fear teaches you more than you wanted to learn. The newsletter's backend exposed nothing useful, except a scheduler set to 2:17 a.m., Hillary's favorite time to email drafts when she wanted to look like she lived in strategy, not sleep. It wasn't evidence. It was an old ache wearing new shoes. Hillary's gone, Margaret said when I called. Gone is not quiet. Quiet is not harmless. I took a walk around my block because adrenaline needs a sidewalk. On the 3rd lap, I saw it, a glint in my maple tree, a small metallic dot no leaf should own. The detective who had handled the blackmail case came with a flashlight and the patience of a person who knows how many people decorate their homes with microphones. He plucked a button camera from the branch with Midas fingers and bagged it like a dead bee. You've got a live one, he said. Can you trace it? Maybe. He angled it toward his phone. It's dumb tech. That's good. Dumb tech brags to the wrong tower. I didn't sleep. I wrote and rewrote the sentence I'd say out loud if I had to. I won't turn my house into a content farm for people who think empathy is a brand. I taped it inside the entry closet. I turned the swan toward the door like a small, ridiculous guard. 2 days later, the detective called. We got a match, he said. Not where you expect. An apartment over Weller's Hardware.
Jules' address. He met me on the street with the warrant in his hand and a look I couldn't read. Don't come up, he said, but don't go far. He disappeared into the stairwell. 10 minutes stretched like bad gum. Then he reappeared, holding a shoebox.
Inside, a cheap lens, a roll of tape, a coil of wire, and my index cards, 12 of them, each with the slate claws I'd seeded. On top, a printed sheet with a list of angles, window reflection, porch step, lamp halo, couch arc. Jules, shaking, sat on the curb between two officers, her hands cuffed in front rather than behind, mercy in a gesture. "It wasn't just me," she blurted when she saw me. "Jane paid. Jane placed the camera. Jane wrote the captions. I just started it. I didn't know it would get that big." "Who is Jane?" I asked, even though my bones already knew. Jules looked at the concrete. She said, "Hillary." She said anonymity was a strategy. She said if I was smart, I'd let her be the villain people recognize, and I'd be the child prodigy no one could catch. She said we were doing journalism. She said, "Enough," the detective said, gently but firm. "Say the rest inside." I watched the door swallow them and realized I was shaking. Not the panic tremor of prey, the grief shake of someone who finds out the fire alarm was real and also late. I texted Margaret one word, "Got her." And she replied with a broom emoji, which is why I trust her. She believes in the cleanup more than the chase. Hillary didn't fall with a single cut. She bled out through 50 paper losses. The platform suspended Open City Digest for policy violations. Her new employer, yes, she'd found one, put her on leave and then released a statement about values. The DA tacked harassment onto her file, which doesn't sound like a felony and isn't, but it sticks like melted sugar. Jules faced charges for unlawful surveillance. A plea deal traded her time for testimony and 100 hours of community service, half of which she asked to do with us in the room she'd sold. I said yes because I am trying to be a person who believes in repair even when repair sounds like a quote someone will print out of context. We changed our rules without changing our heart. Windows closed during meetings, lamps on, phones in the bowl. Pens allowed for your own page, not your neighbor's. We added a seat by the door that rotates, the watcher, the welcomer, the person who checks the porch for glints with a smile so we don't become the kind of church the internet thinks we are. And still, the real work wasn't policy. It was the practice of not letting our trust be a commodity again. One night after the dust mostly settled, Tessa showed up with a pot of soup and a look on her face I hadn't seen since we were 28, and the rain made the city honest. She said, "I'm not here to talk about Hillary. I'm here to tell you something I should have said a year ago." She set the soup on the stove like a small animal she hoped would stay. "When you confronted me about book club, you asked who paid me. I told you the noble story and the money story. I didn't tell you the story underneath. I liked power. It felt like finally being on the side that decides. I told myself I was protecting you because that let me feel like a decent thief. I was wrong," she swallowed. "If you ever want to use that sentence against me, I won't stop you. I'm tired of outrunning truth." I leaned on the counter because righteous posture is hard to hold. I said, "I won't use it against you. I'll use it with you, if you mean it." She did. I could tell because she didn't ask for a reward. She ladled soup into bowls, we ate, and when she left, she didn't look back to see if I'd watch her go. A week later, Closed Doors was fuller than it had ever been. People sat on the floor without martyrdom. The man with the weather vane friend brought his friend. The woman in the green jacket read a letter to her former self and then tore it up into confetti because sometimes ritual is the only thing that explains us to ourselves. Jules showed up for her service hours with a clipboard and a humility that didn't beg. She took coats. She made tea. She didn't speak unless asked. When the night ended, she stayed to sweep, and when she handed me the dustpan, she said, "I put away my pen." And for once, I didn't have to wonder if a sentence meant its opposite.
I'd love to tell you the threat is over. It isn't. The internet doesn't retire, it mutates. But I've stopped hoping for a life without weather. I've started building better roofs. Aaron and I learned a new ritual, too. On nights when the past gets loud, we each put one truth on the table. Small, not cinematic. I was jealous at work today. I wanted to drink at lunch. I Googled myself and hated the feeling. We say kept, and we mean it. It's astonishing what that clears out of a room.
On the anniversary of the first Open City Digest post, I hosted a gathering we refused to call a celebration. We named it Maintenance. The rules were simple. Bring something boring you do to keep yourself intact. Someone brought their receipt folder and showed us the tabs. Someone demonstrated a 10-minute stretch. Margaret passed around a list of questions she asks herself before she forwards anything. Tessa showed us the little index cards she writes now, not with data, but with electric bills and rent due dates and the name of a dentist that actually returns calls. Jules handed around a printed retraction, signed, folded into cranes. When the night thinned and the lamp made a small lake on the entry table, I took the swan in my hands and turned it off, then on, then off. "This is silly," I said to the room that was down to 3 of us. "It's not," Margaret said. "It's a hinge." I set the swan down and spoke the sentence that had carried me from keys in a rainstorm to a bowl for sleeping phones. She called me her best friend. But then I read the group chat. And then I learned the difference between intimacy and surveillance. And then I built a life where my secrets aren't currency. And then I made a room where we say kept out loud and mean it. And then when a new threat arrived dressed as journalism, we named it, and we kept the lamp on anyway. Tessa smiled without asking to be forgiven. Jules nodded without asking to be absolved. The room breathed like a creature that understood it had survived. After everyone left, I checked the porch for glints. Nothing but dew. I locked the door with both hands and put the phones back on the entry table and wrote one more note for the inside of my closet. If the weather turns, tell the truth first. Call the system, not the storm. Don't feed them twice. Keep the lamp on. I taped it next to the other notes and laughed at myself for needing paper reminders like a child. Then I remembered that every grown-up is a child with better shoes and a calendar. When I went to bed, I didn't take my phone. The hall glowed low. The house felt like a person who wasn't listening for an intruder anymore, just for the ordinary click of a kettle in the morning. If you want a neat hunting, take this one. Hillary's byline lost its teeth. The company that loved her cruelty loves something else now. Open City Digest lives behind a paywall that 3 people forgot to renew. The cousin moved states away to sell something that doesn't involve lenses. Jules is writing grants for a shelter and shows up on Sundays with compostable cups and a quiet that reads like apology and practice. If you want the true ending, it's this. I still check the tree for glints. I still label folders boring names. I still plant kind secrets to see who waters them. I still believe in keys. I just don't hand them out in the rain anymore. And when someone asks me what to do about a friend who might be a camera pointed at their heart, I say, tell one small truth and watch its echo. Keep a light you can turn on by yourself. Write your own group chat. Set the permissions. Then I walk them to the entry table, touch the swan like a talisman, and say, we'll keep it. Kept.